So it's been a while since I've done one of these generic tips videos, but I've got 5 new tips for you in today's video in an attempt to revive this series. Hopefully you don't know at least one of these, but if you know all of them, let me know in the comments below. I do love reading the comments section, and give me and the community something that you know or want to know, and I will try to cover it in the next video in this series. There will be 5 different things I'm going to cover in this video, so I'll make sure to put chapters in, but here are the 5 things I want to go over, along with timestamps in the video. Now let's get into the first tip for this one.
That's one!
When Gears 5 was introduced, the Coalition added freezing damage into the game, but what happens to your damage when you freeze an enemy in place? To test this, I took the Horde, removed all skill cards from my class, and started freezing enemies. As a baseline, I used both the Lancer and Snub Pistol's damage of 82 and 150 respectively, then tested again with a frozen enemy. What I found was that all damage is tripled against body or headshots, and active reloads also have their damage boosted. I can definitely see why freezing enemies is such a powerful tool, tripling everyone's damage against that target. This is most effective against bosses, and everyone is able to freeze enemies with an ice cannon, but I now want to try out the Gunner's flash freeze skill card some more. Although there are some enemies that cannot be frozen, such as the Kestrel, Flock, Guardians and Sentinels, I do need to test how freezing damage works against these. If anyone knows, please leave a comment below explaining everything you can.
That's 2!
The next tip is going to be the longest one so far, and there is a lot to cover. How exactly is a Demolition's artillery strike damage applied? In a previous video I tested both the assault rifle and critical damage perk effects on artillery strike, and found they did nothing. This time around I tested every single skill card the Demolitions has, and worked out the effect it has on this class's ultimate ability. You may be surprised to see that the following skill cards all have some sort of effect on artillery strike's damage, and I will explain what each one does. Firstly, let's look at the base damage of artillery strike, which deals 11,250 damage. Since the base version of this ability fires 5 shells, this makes each shell deal 2,250 damage. This will be important later on. Our first skill card that affects artillery strike is Officer's Prerogative. This was a nice and simple addition, with a level 1 version of this card dropping 1 extra artillery shell, and this increases by 1 with each skill card level, dropping an extra 6 at maximum rank. This skill card will take the 11,250 base damage up to 24,750 at maximum rank. The next skill card I want to discuss are both the Custom Boom Shot and Custom Lancer GL skill cards. On their own, these do nothing, but when you activate Artillery Strike after hitting an active reload, you will get a nice damage boost. Active reloading with any weapon equipped will deal an extra 25% damage, regardless of which weapon it is, and whether or not you have these skill cards equipped. Now, when you hit the active with your Lancer GL or Boom Shot, and you have the skill card equipped, your Artillery Strike will deal an extra 141 damage per shell, and this 141 damage is multiplied by the level of your Custom Lancer GL/Boom Shot skill card, added after the initial 25% damage boost from being an active. This might sound a little confusing, but just using a level 6 Custom Boom Shot skill card, your Artillery Strike would deal 18,290 damage. The next card we will look at is Spotter Support, which is again nice and simple to work out. This skill card drops 2 for 7 artillery shells on enemies that teammates have marked. The reason this is important is that all players are able to mark the same enemy at once, although the first person's mark will be the only one that's visible above the enemy. This means that if all players mark a boss, then on top of the 11 artillery shells that the Demolitions can drop, an extra 28 shells can be dropped onto the boss. With the base damage of 2,250 damage per shell, 39 artillery shells being dropped, it will deal 87,750 damage. These extra shells can also benefit from the extra 25% damage from active reloads and the respective damage buff from Custom Lancer GL or Boom Shot. Razor Hail is the last skill card that has any kind of effect on Artillery Strike. The card states that explosives will deal 15 to 30% bleeding damage, but this is a little misinforming. It is true that explosives deal 15 to 30% bleeding damage, but this is each second, or 5 seconds, equating to 75 to 150% extra damage overall. The base damage of 11,250 will deal an extra 8,435 to 16,875 due to some rounding errors. Depending on the level of your Razor Hail skill card, it depends on the total amount of bleeding damage dealt. But there is something else that affects this value. Do you remember the Custom Boomshot and Custom Lancer GL skill cards? Not only do they increase the damage of each shell, but they will increase your bleeding damage of artillery strike by 10 to 60%, depending on the level of the skill card, but only when you hit an active reload once again. For example, if you have maxed out versions of both the Razor Hail and Custom Boomshot skill cards, your artillery strike will deal an extra 240% of the damage dealt, which is an insane amount of damage. Taking all of this into account, what is the highest theoretical damage that artillery strike can deal? You can drop 39 shells onto a single enemy, and with an active round in either your Boomshot or Lancer GL with the matching skill card equipped, each shell will deal an extra 141 damage, except for 4 because of a weird rounding error, on top of the additional 25% damage boost from the active. This will cause it to deal a whopping 142,655 damage, which will also deal yet another 340,370 bleeding damage, for a total of 485,020 damage. Imagine, if you will, that enemy is frozen, which will triple all the damage for a massive 1,455,060 damage. That is a lot of damage. That is everything I have managed to figure out about Artillery Strike and how it deals such absurd numbers. If you doubt any of these, then please test this yourself and correct me in the comments section below.
That's 3!
Simply put, yes, this works as intended. The Scorcher deals 74 damage at base value, and I have tested this again with the Brawler's level 4 Scorcher Mastery skill card equipped for an extra 50% damage. This boosted the Scorcher's damage to 111 damage, meaning the skill card definitely works as intended.
That's 4!
Let's take a look at all the skill cards that deal bleeding damage, as there are 15 different skill cards which all deal differing amounts of bleeding damage, with the highest values being the Venom Blade when the skill cards are maxed out. Like I mentioned with the Artillery Strike tip, Razor Hail's skill card says explosives deal 15 to 30% bleeding damage every second for 5 seconds, and this is the same across all bleeding skill cards. For the Venom Blade skill card, the value on the card ranges from 130 to 160%, which equates to 650% to 800% bleeding damage in total. The low values on some bleeding skill cards are definitely misleading, so for each I will show all the ranges for the bleeding damage per second and totals. I still need to figure out if bleeding damage stacks in any way, but it's nice to know exactly what the poor skill card descriptions actually equate to.
That's 5, motherfuckers!
When Gears 5 was released, we were given a total of 8 different difficulties to play on, with higher difficulties requiring more predetermined mutators to be activated. Everyone has surely noticed that as the difficulty gets higher, enemies hit harder and take more damage to kill, but how much extra health do enemies get? Let's say enemies on beginner difficulty, so 0 mutators active, have a base health value of 100%. Unfortunately, enemy health does not increase in any kind of pattern, so instead I'm going to display each difficulty, along with the health multiplier for each of these difficulties. Enemies on master difficulty will have over 3 times their normal health values, without even considering the more health mutator. Speaking of which, I have actually been getting the value of the more health mutator wrong for a while. In Horde mode, this mutator grants exactly 50% extra health to enemies. I guess I need to go back and amend a bunch of videos now. That's it for my 4th tips and tricks video for Gears 5, and as soon as I have another 5 worthwhile tips, I will make a 5th video for this series. Let me know if you knew all of these or not. Leave me a comment below on some of your best tips, or something you want me to look at in general. Like the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't, and as always, take it easy Gears, and I will catch you in the next one.